What is the metric system? The international standard system of measurement. A meter is not a unit defined by a ruler. It is a shared agreement we made based on the speed of light. A kilogram is no longer a lump of metal. It is not a weight stored in a laboratory somewhere. It is a value we defined using the constants of nature. If yard and foot measurements began with parts of the human body, the metric system began with nature. The metric system was created in France in the late 18th century, and today we use it all around the world. But what was the objective basis that allowed a system created by one country to be accepted as a universal standard? To find the answer, we need to look at France in the 18th century. On July 14, 1789, in Paris, France, an angry crowd stormed the Bastille prison, broke down its gates, and opened the way to a new era. The French Revolution is remembered as the people's victory over absolute royal power. The revolutionaries aimed to sweep away the ancien regime, the old system led by the royal family, nobles, and clergy. In such a time of change, it was natural for people to begin discussing a new system of measurement. At that time in France, far too many different units were used in trade, construction, surveying, farming, and manufacturing. There were not just many units, even units with the same name had different values from one region to another. Many of them also did not follow the decimal system, so calculations rarely worked out in one simple step. When units are not standardized, trade stops being about math and starts being about emotions. Instead of calm explanations, we hear words like, "You cheated me," or "This is not fair." The confusion over units disrupted trade and public systems, and it spread into society as a whole. This made the French Revolution a turning point for reforming the measurement system. At that time, the French Academy of Sciences stepped forward to take the lead. Scientists hoped that scientific progress would not remain inside laboratories, but would help change everyday life across the nation. At that time, France was a world leader in measurement science. Instruments for measuring length had become increasingly precise, and clocks for measuring time had become more accurate than ever. There were even scales that could detect the slightest differences in mass. All the right conditions were falling into place to create a new standard of measurement. One guiding principle began to take hold. This principle held that standards of measurement should come from nature, the shared inheritance of all humankind. The new standards for mass and length should not belong to any single era or ruler. They should not also give an advantage to only a few. They should remain constant even as the years pass. So scholars at the time believed that only standards based on nature could last forever. After years of careful thought, French scientists decided to base the new standard on the size of the Earth. They decided to define a unit of length using the circumference of the Earth. Using the Earth's meridian as a reference, they defined 1 meter as 1/10,000,000th of the distance from the North Pole to the equator. That is how the meter was born. Even this value, however, could not completely overcome the limits of measurement. So today, we define 1 meter as the distance light travels in a vacuum in 1/299,792,458th of a second. We chose a standard that is even more unchanging than the Earth. But why did we choose to define the unit of length first? Because length was the foundation for all other units. Scholars at the time believed that units like length, area, volume, and mass should fit together and form one unified system. For example, the basic unit of area, the r, and the unit of volume, the liter, were defined from the meter. An r is the area of a square that measures 10 meters on each side. A liter was defined as 1,000th of the volume of a cube that measures 1 meter on each edge. In other words, 1 liter is the volume of a cube that measures 10 centimeters on each side. In this way, the units were designed to work smoothly together, not separately. Then how was mass defined? Today, the basic unit of mass is the kilogram, but at that time, scientists first used the gram as their starting point. At first, 1 gram was defined as the mass of 1 cubic centimeter of pure water at 0 degrees Celsius. Later, scientists discovered that water reaches its maximum density at about 4 degrees Celsius. So 1 kilogram was refined to mean the mass of 1,000 cubic centimeters of pure water at 4 degrees Celsius. Basing the standard on water seemed natural, but water turned out to be more sensitive than expected. Using this definition, scientists created a physical standard made of platinum iridium alloy, known as the International Prototype of the Kilogram. The problem was that over time, the mass of the international prototype of the kilogram could change by a tiny amount. A standard is meant to remain perfectly steady, yet the object at its heart was not completely stable. Scientists did not ignore this issue. They continued to study it and discuss possible solutions. Finally, in 2019, we redefined the kilogram using the Planck constant. Now, the standard no longer depends on a single piece of metal, but rests more firmly on the unchanging laws of nature. The reason the metric system became so powerful is simple. People wanted to make sure that no matter who measured, the result would always be the same. They chose to anchor the standard not in power, but in nature. That is why the metric system did not become the dialect of a single country, but a standard language of measurement for many countries around the world.